We're told that Jesus is the God of all things. For most of us, we need to be shown. But Jesus says, well, let me show you.
This is kingdom offering. Every breath.
Hey, I want to tell you a story today. The story of the curious king's daughter. So, once upon a time, there was a kingdom that was so large and so powerful. Excuse me. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom that was so large and so powerful that everyone recognized the king of that kingdom as being the king of kings. I guess there might have been some smaller kingdoms somewhere, far away, small and inconsequential, with kings that were greedy and cruel. But everyone understood that the king of these kings would one day come and enforce judgment over these evil kingdoms, these small kingdoms, small kings and queens. You see, this king of kings was in control of all things surrounding him. All of that is true. But I actually want to tell a little bit of a different story today. So you had to know that in the background, but today I want to tell you about the daughter of that King of Kings. You see, she was born not only within the king's realm, but she was also born in the center of the king's castle. I mean, of course she was. She's the daughter of a king. And I'm sure we all have an image in our minds about what a majestic castle is like. We've seen the pictures. Maybe you've been on a tour of an amazing royal estate. It's carved out of the side of a cliff or set high upon, so often it's high upon a mountain or a kingdom above, or high above the mountain above their kingdom, maybe on a mountaintop. And we have that memory. Think of that, and then think of something even bigger than that, because his kingdom was so immense that it covered so much ground. The castle was, of course, in the center of a walled city within this huge realm. And inside this city, the citizens of this kingdom worked, and they played, and they raised their families and created a community of the kingdom. And the castle was the center, the political and economic and thought center of the kingdom. The king lived there with his only daughter. Her name was Lauriana. And the king's wife, this is the sad part of the story, Lauriana's mom, she died when Lauriana was only 1 year old. And so that meant that the king and his daughter were very close. She was his only child. So let's be certain of all of what we understand here in this moment. So you see, you know this, but the daughter of a king is called a princess. She's royalty. And one day when she gets a little bit older, when she's an adult, she will share in all the power and the authority of her father, the king. She's a princess. So as the story goes, as the child grew up, like every child, she began to explore the castles, looking for doors that were locked and hallways she'd never been in. One day, as a young lady of 13 years old, Lauriana found a castle hallway that led down a set of stairs to the basement. And there were years and years and years of castle goods that were in storage down there. She had never seen this room before. There were dozens of shelves with thousands of crates and boxes. There were old legal documents and maps, tools and furniture, paintings, old gifts. It was there that Lauriana found an old box of clothes. Clothes, isn't that an interesting thing to capture her imagination in all of that basement? She grew curious. She wondered what they would look like if she tried them on. So she slipped out of her expensive and colorful royal gown. She took her crown off and jewelry, and she found some worn out shoes that didn't really fit. She found a dress that was old and stained and torn and was much too large. She slipped that on and she looked ridiculous. The dress smelled of mold. But Lauriana had never seen clothes like this. She decided that she wanted to wear them out. And so, much to the surprise of the kingdom citizens, uh, they saw her and hardly recognized her. She looked so different dressed in rags. So I want to stop here and I want to ask a question. Now that Lauriana is dressed in rags, is she still a princess? She doesn't look like a princess. She doesn't carry herself like a princess. People don't recognize her as a princess. So, is she a princess? She looked like a pauper, but she's the daughter of a king. And the daughter of the king is still a princess. Dressing poorly doesn't change the fact that she is royalty. She may be very poorly dressed, and she may be disappointing the king by her decision to rest. She may be disappointing the king by her decision to dress in rags, but she is still the king's daughter. She's a princess, a poorly dressed princess. Well, this curious story continues. From there, Lauriana kept looking around and exploring, and one day, not so long after the day that she found the basement and the clothes, Lauriana went exploring and she found the castle kitchen. She had never seen it before. She had never been allowed down so far in the castle where the cooks and bakers work. She found the kitchen abuzz with 15 different people preparing meals for the king's gifts and all the workers in the castle. So, fearing that she might get caught and told to go back upstairs, she didn't disturb them, but she walked around to the back of the kitchen, and that was where they processed the food. The food was brought in there, and they cut it up, and they would process the bad food out and keep the good food, because, of course, the king only gets the good food. There was a huge pile of food that did not pass the test of a king's banquet table. And there was, I don't know, just everything you can think of. Week-old vegetables that were pale and limp, tomatoes that were all shriveled up, and fruit that was covered with flies and black spots. And there was also an old moldy bread in a basket that clearly had been there for weeks. And in all of her life, Lauriana had never seen this kind of food. She had only had the best of the best, the most delectable and the freshest. She was very curious about what this might taste like. So, curiously, she decided to sit down and eat some of the food. It tasted awful, and she could tell that it was beginning to upset her stomach. But she was 13, and for some reason, she couldn't stop eating. And now, I have a question for you. I want to stop just for a moment. Is Lauriana still a princess? She's dressed in rags. She's eating spoiled food. She could be dressed beautifully. She could be sitting at the king's table, but no, that's not what she's experiencing. So is she still a princess? Yeah, right? Of course. She is still the king's daughter. She is a poorly dressed and now poorly fed princess, but the very fact that she is the king's daughter means that she is by title a princess. Well, strangely, the story continues. Lauriana continues to explore. Not that long after she found the clothes and the food, she found a small tunnel along the ground against the castle wall surrounding the castle area. She saw this little tunnel and she looked around to see if anyone was watching. She was curious and she began to crawl through the hole, even though she was small. She barely fit through the opening, and as she crawled, it got smaller and smaller. The wall was probably more than 20 feet thick, so by the time she started crawling very far at all, she was in full darkness and deep in some dirty mud. You'd think she'd back out, but she didn't. And coming out on the other side of the castle, she found herself among some suspicious looking people. They were largely thieves and liars, and they were dangerous in so many ways, ways she had never seen before. Seeing her come from the other side of the city wall, they invited her to come over, to be part of their group. She had never seen people like this, and Lauriana was, what's our word? Curious. She began wondering what her life might look like, imagining it to be adventurous and exciting if she were to throw in with these people. She just wondered what it might be like. So I have one last question. Is Lauriana still a princess? Because by now, she is poorly dressed and poorly fed. And now she is living poorly. But the truth is, she is still the daughter of the king. And the king loves his lost daughter very much. He stands on the top of that huge wall, watching out over his realm, watching for his princess to return. You see, the kingdom of God is like this. This is Dave Scher. This is Kingdom Offerings. Peace.